Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, I worked with Adam, luckily only in the past. I'm not a JavaScript developer, and I don't build voice apps for a living. So this is a proper Halloween for me. I'm all dressed up and faking it all the way through. I work as a developer relations manager, which is fairly a new job for me. I only joined Zebra 3 months ago. Before that, that's where I worked with Adam. I was a developer advocate with Nexmo, and I worked with Adam. And before that, I was a developer, and I speak C#, not JavaScript. I also run Women Who Code here in Bristol. So please, if you'd like to host us, or if you'd like to speak for us, we are an inclusive group for everybody. So just talk to me or contact us on Twitter, something. Right, so enough with me. And let's talk about voice apps. So a voice app is an application that relies on speech, natural human language, to process any queries, simple as it is. How many of you use voice apps? I was expecting more. On a daily basis? Okay, just asking. So, just to look more serious and for the sake of facts, I brought some facts. So, for some reason, I'm really struggling to find numbers from Europe or the UK. So this survey was made in North America, actually. And the survey was around marketers and how enterprises are willing to invest in a voice app to interact with their customer base, basically. So the interesting thing about these numbers is 1/3 of the marketers do already have or are willing to engage with customers via, the devices, basically using a voice app, and that is only 4 years after Google Home, and I think 5 years after Alexa, which is quite an impressive number. I know also that here in the UK, well, it's almost 2020, but then the statistics were saying that by 2019, over 40% of the households in the UK do have an Amazon Echo. So that's like half of the, every house has an Echo at home. Who's got an Alexa at home? How many of them?
5.
Do you have 5?
They were on offer for £8 yesterday, and I bought another.
I mean, if you ask Sam, you probably can give away at least 10. I got mine for free from Sam. It was sitting in his car. I met Sam, a friend, and he's like, "Oh, by the way, I have an Echo. Do you want to take it?" How many of you have a Google Home? I do have one too. So yes, to answer the other question, I have like an Echo and I have a Google Home. The only difference is I didn't pay the £8 for them. I got them both for free. One courtesy of Google, the other one is courtesy of Sam. So, by 2020, half of the searches, overall searches, are going to be using voice. So this is what customers, and this is not related to, companies or marketers, this is just end users. So that's what they tend to use. And obviously it's interesting when we tackle the age thing, because 5% of consumers who are between 25 to 49 speak to their devices every single day. I personally do, because every morning I wake up and my Google Assistant will remind me of every single reminder I have. And it would be like, "Good morning, Rabeb. Today, it's very rainy in Bristol. Remember to buy some bread. Talk to my mom." No, honestly, I'm not even kidding. So if you have the Pixel phone, when you set your alarm, all you have to do is do some sort of settings to enable the Google Assistant with the alarm, and then it will ask you what you want to know exactly. So a mistake I did is I said, okay, I want to know the news. So 6 a.m., it will go through my reminders, and it will tell me the reminders as I set them. So there is no, engineering behind it. It won't be like, oh, you need to do this. No, if I said, I need to call my mom, it will tell me, remember that I need to call my mom. So it literally just reads that, and then it will be like, here's the latest news from BBC. And that's when I wake up, just to shut that down, because I don't want to read about the news. Not at 6 a.m., definitely not. So you can do that if you want to. Right, so the point here is these apps are really popular. This is the future. It's going to be the era of voice, and everyone is going to just to jump in and use voice. In the same way we moved from, big, massive desktop screens to web, and we thought that was like amazing and revolutionary. And then we're like, oh, no, we need it to be smaller, so we moved to mobile. And not because just we are the nature of human beings, we are lazy, or like, oh, we can't type anymore. Oh my God, how can I do that? So we are all moving to voice. Now, the trick is, because this is such a trend, some people fail very early on, and they miss the best of best practices if you are building a voice app, which is, do you even need one? So imagine you're in the office, maybe open plan or not, and someone comes in, usually a stakeholder, someone with some powers, and be like, right, I was in this conference and I talked to this amazing sales engineer. I think we need to build this app. And you'll be like, who, why, what? No idea. Everyone is building these apps, so don't we build one? And that's the shortest road to failure. Obviously, if it's a useless app, doesn't matter if you build it or not, that is going to fail anyway. But even worse, if you already, and presumably, unless you are, an independent developer, hobbyist who wants to build maybe a skill on Alexa, for example, to have something with the president that I should not name, maybe, some people did build these skills. If you are...
Alexa asked President Trump if he's been impeached yet.
Unfortunately, he's not, no. So if you are within a company, if you are within a business, the chances are that you already have a product out there. So by building a useless app, you are already hurting your brand that you've been building for a while. So it's just, you're making things worse. So first thing is, if that person who can make a decision walks in the room and says, we need to build an app, make sure to stop them and say, like, breathe, have a moment. Do we really need to build that app? So that is the first thing to know. Something that also may help with making this decision. There are different apps, again, to do a specific service. For example, Capital One was the first bank ever to build an app on Alexa and Google Home, and the app would simply, you can ask about your bank statements, or how much money do I still have in my account, things like that. Then PayPal built an app to, actually you can make bank transfers through their app, so you just use Alexa, and Alexa send some money to someone, and it's going to happen. But interestingly, even with those very specific products, this is how these voice-enabled, the smart speakers are being used. So it's still pretty much the general questions. It could be a question about President Trump, for example. I know someone who's making a very good amount of money because they have a skill that will just read an inspirational quote every morning. And they are making money with that. Or if you ask Alexa what Alexa thinks about Google Home. Just general questions when your friends come in and they are just talking to your device instead of talking to you, and trying to get jokes and stuff like that. The weather, and then the music is pretty high as well. But as you can see, all the food services, stuff like that, and local businesses, it's pretty older product, so it's still pretty low, whether that means that you need an app to be out there because there isn't much that offers something similar to your service, or that means that maybe there isn't much value in that. That's up to, I guess, each case separately. Right. Now that you established that you really, really, really need a voice app, we are clear on that, and we're going to go ahead and start code it, right? Because you like coding. We just start coding. Usually people, when they see the word design, they tend to ignore it. And first of all, we think about design as designing UI, designing screens. Not even UX, not even the user journey through the app. People always relate UI design to fonts, colors, and buttons on a screen. And the reality of the business is sometimes you don't even have a design team in the, within your team. Sometimes you are the developer, the tester, the designer, project owner, maybe project manager, and all of it, because that's like what it is. So this is a stage that sometimes gets ignored. And it's even more critical for voice, because for voice, we are relying completely on natural language. There is no screens, there is no interfaces, there is no way that visually we can guide a user. All we have is a conversation. So it's all about, they are called messages. It's the messages between the user and the app, and that's all we have. So we need, what we are really saying by designing a voice app is we are building an experience, and how do we want that experience to be? So as we try to build that experience, few things to consider. And the first thing is, what do I really want to achieve with my app? What do I want my users to do with it? How are they gonna interact with it? How are they going to even find it? And why would they use my app instead of using someone else's app, a competitor's app? Something that you need to think about fairly early, and that will affect every other stage of the whole cycle, is where is it going to live? Are you targeting multiple devices? Are you planning to have a skill on Alexa and action on Google and whatever they call them on Siri, for example? In which case, when you're writing the code, you need to make sure that you are using your tech, what you're using would allow you to do that. Also, what market are you targeting? Do you need to stick with English, or is it multiple languages, for example? And how is that going to impact you? So a good thing to do in this case, while mapping this user journey, first of all, if you already have the product, try to say what the users are saying about your product, whether on the the app reviews, or let's say you have a chatbot, and try to figure out what are the things, either the missing things, what are the gaps in your experience that voice could fill them in. How could you use these things to offer that plus? What is the thing that would make me say, oh, they now have a voice app, and it's really useful for me. So that's one thing to help you mapping the experience. The other thing is look at your competitors and see what they are offering as well, and make it personal. The whole idea about building the voice apps, or the way we call them conversational AI, is we are building smart apps that sound like they are humans. And if we want something that sounds and feels human, what we really want to do is to make them personal enough. Again, with both like almost any skill with Alexa or Google, they will use my name, which is very personal. It's little things like that, but it makes the whole experience personal. And how much data do you need to gather early on so you could use that data to create that very personal experience for me? And make it simple, because you don't really want to open up like a world of possibilities for yourself. The simpler it is, it's like you are containing the whole thing. Otherwise, people can say whatever they want to say, right? And how are you going to make... That's not me. Okay, maybe it's me. So the simpler it is, the easier for you to think about every scenario, what could be said, and how the app is going to react, and just to make it do a job. So always try, as much as possible, keep it simple and short. Talking about keeping it simple and short, one thing to really, really consider is how are you going to gather your informations? First of all, what kind of information do you need in that context, and how are you going to gather this information, and how are you going to deal with things like, context switching? There is nothing stopping me from saying two different things in the same context, right? I can say anything to my device. It's still a little device. That's my slave. I can do whatever I want with my slave. So how are we gonna handle all that? Again, think about it. It is a conversation, and it has to be a contextual, natural conversation. One thing to help with that is use user stories to map the story exactly. Let's say I have a story that says, as a user, I want my device to read to me the weather every morning so I know how to dress up without having to look at a screen. So I know exactly what is the scenario, and I could take that story and map a flow. Some depends what you're using. Some would call them conversation flows. Others would call them dialogue flows. And the dialogue flow is what we'll decide, because by having that dialogue flow, you are defining your voice commands. At the end of the day, we are building an application. I can't just look to some code, be it JavaScript or C# or whatever, and say, give me the temperature right now. There's no such thing as this. Code needs, you need a function, you need something with properties. If I am asking for the weather, I'm going to make an API call to a weather API thing. So how am I going to take all that information from the user in a very human natural language and translate it to machine language, basically? So having those dialogue flows will help with the voice commands later on. The voice commands really depend on, we talk about three things. An intent, utterances, which is something I never know how to pronounce correctly, and the last thing is, some call them slots, some call them variables. They are properties. So the intent is what the user is trying to achieve. What is the intention? Book me a flight is the intent. Then the utterances is the different ways that you can say the same intent. Again, we are using the human language. I could say, could you please book me a flight? I would like a flight, book me a flight. So there are different ways, not to mention different languages, different accents, to say the exact same thing. So with that intent, we have a list of different utterances, and then we have the variables. For the variables, it depends on the intent itself. Some intents don't need any variables. Alexa, tell me a joke. It will just tell you a joke. Book me a flight from Bristol to Amsterdam. My slots or variables are properties are the location, the origin, and the destination. So it will take the word Bristol and knows that is my origin, and then it will take Amsterdam and knows that's my destination. And then when we are, sending the request through the APIs, we know exactly what properties we are sending. So this whole mapping your conversation flow will give you a clear idea what you need to code later on and what needs to be involved. For example, you may know early on that you really need to use a language model, because that will help you, that you need to use something built in, a cognitive service. I don't know what they call them with, maybe, Adam with Alexa, because I use the Microsoft bot framework a lot, so I know it's called Lewis.
Lambdas.
Is it the Lambda?
Yeah, they use lambdas for the Alexa.
Okay, so, Lambda. For example, for Microsoft, they have a cognitive service called Lewis, and Lewis, which is language understanding intelligent service. So that will help you build a language model for all the different utterances, and then it can be used. So conversation, build that flow, please. And with the flow, handling the errors. Some people would say that there is no concept of errors with voice apps because you can say anything. Whether it makes sense or not, for the app, that's a different thing, but it's not, there is no little pop-up window that will tell me, error, you can do this, you can say this. So it's almost having an error strategy is really crucial, because you are trying to think of all the weird cases and scenarios that could possibly happen and how the app is going to react to that. If I am booking a flight and I say, Alexa, book me a flight from Bristol to Amsterdam on the 5th of April, what's going to happen? Because the 5th of April, if we are talking about this year, that's in the past. Do we want an app to make the decision and book for next year, which is a very risky decision? Or how is the app going to communicate with the user that there is confusion about this date, for example? In this case, the way usually it happens, you can try it with even asking about something just related to a date for the weather or setting an alarm. It just keeps asking you again. It will keep asking again until it gets something that makes sense. But always expect the unexpected. I think my favorite one is whenever I ask Alexa about Google and Google about Alexa, and they are so diplomatic. They are, like, if you, I think the answer, I can't remember the exact answer, but basically it would say something along the lines, it's another service that does the same thing as me, and it's a great service or something like that. Or when it doesn't know something, and it will say, sorry, my engineers are still working on me. That's always also, you almost feel sorry straight away, like, I'm so sorry I asked you that question. Don't feel bad about it. So always expect the unexpected. Humans are funny human beings. We are funny, so you never know what we can say. Now, you thought about all of that, and it's time to really put some code out there. Good news, bad news, I don't know, but I'm not going to show you any code here. simply because there are different tools available out there, and it is up to you. Again, you could be just someone curious and you want to try something on your own time, and you want to do something for Alexa because that's very popular. So you try something for Alexa, or you try something for Google. Or you could be a business and you know exactly what you want, in which case you have to use one of these. But still, it doesn't have, if you are going to be an Alexa skill, doesn't mean that you have to use the development somehow kit that comes with Alexa. Because I think now all of them, by all of them I mean the big five, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and IBM. Almost forget about the fifth one. They kind of all got the idea, and they all play nicely with each other. So if you have a back end that happens to be on Azure, for example, you still can use Alexa, IBM Watson. Again, they all play nicely together. There are other solutions available out there. So there is a lot of solutions now that they offer the hybrid solution. The code ones run everywhere. So you'll find a lot online that would offer, you just write the code once and it will be available on Google and Alexa. Google and Alexa are the most, famous and popular ones right now. So the chances are that's where you'll find the availability. Everyone is trying to target those two specifically. There are even no-code solutions. So all you have to do is to put together the flow I was talking about. So by putting the dialogue flow, they will generate some code for you. Like, I guess it depends on how simple or complex the solution is, whether that would be something for you to choose. So a few things I really want to focus on this is testing, because you don't really want to deploy every single time and go through the whole process to be able to test. There are you could, with Google and Alexa and Microsoft, they all provide testing apps, so you could test locally. I think Google and Alexa, they call them the companion app. With Microsoft, it's called the web chat. It's a web chat platform hosted on Azure. There are some other solutions that I can't remember the name, but they also allow you to test without going through the whole thing and deploying. So that's for testing, because that's usually something that we need. Consider accents and languages and accents. Just because you have something, sometimes they don't play well with accents. I'm a victim of that. I'm a victim of the accent thing. Cortana, Microsoft's Cortana, is really, really bad with accents. It's almost impossible for Cortana to understand anything I say. I may call it racist once or twice, just because of that. So consider accents and languages. Adding cognitive services, especially services that will help with processing natural languages and building language models, because that's what makes the whole thing smart, really. You want to be able to understand everything and to react to it. The good thing about cognitive services, I'm tempted to say most of them, but I don't really know. At least for the one I tried, which is the Microsoft one, just because you're targeting multiple languages, it doesn't mean that when you are developing the app, you have to write like your utterances, for example, in different languages. In fact, you still can use, let's say, English. So you still can use only English, but the what's his name? Is it Amal? I can't remember the word. Anyway, what's under the hood, the smart thingy under the hood to process all that data, they added stuff under the hood that they would do the translation for you as well. So you could build everything just focusing on English, and then your app could understand someone who's speaking Chinese. They obviously, like any new product, usually there is a list of languages, starts with, it's pretty big list to be honest by now, but that's usually the case. So that's also something very good that you could do. Data, sometimes people ask me about this, about like privacy and how you are storing and how you are making sure you're only getting, GDPR and following all that stuff. So that's something to consider. Consider data and security, especially for apps that require personal information and banking details, for example. You really don't want to book an expensive flight by mistake just because Google is listening when they told you they are not listening. So consider that. And one more thing is, after the app is ready, how are you evaluating and training the app? Because we still need the usual analytics with every application. You want to see how it works exactly, maybe. But because it's a voice app, there are maybe some areas that you want to focus on more than others. Training the app, for example, the more the app is used, the more it will kind of train itself. So it will use every single input as an utterances. So you don't have to do that on the side. As long as it's being used, every single input, that's an utterance to make it better. Evaluating things, for example, you want to see how long are the sessions and what are the most used utterances that people are using. Google and Alexa, and Microsoft, and IBM Watson, they all have their own analytics, so that comes with the package in a way. You still can use third parties, and there are applications, again, that I can't name, I can dig the names, but there are applications that are specifically for that. So you get informations about people are using this specific language. So maybe I should focus on this market, or people are saying this one thing, so probably that is again, that's the experience I should focus on, or maybe I'm lacking some things within that. So focusing on evaluating the app to make it better. And with that, that's the whole life cycle I gave you, design. Just kidding. With that, thank you very much. Do you have any questions for me? I don't see any pizza, so you might as well ask me questions.